Story 1. Saw a post on Reddit earlier, someone talking about being ghosted after just one date, and I couldn't stop thinking about it because in my case, it wasn't just one date, and it wasn't some awkward coffee meetup with mismatched vibes or stilted conversation or fake smiles. It was something that actually felt real, something with weight and warmth, something that made me stop and think, maybe this one's different, because her name was Elise, and we met in the psychology section of this quiet independent bookstore downtown, the kind with creaky wooden floors, crooked shelves, and handwritten staff recommendations tucked between paperbacks, where I was flipping through a book on anxiety and trauma, and she reached past me to grab a copy of The Body Keeps the Score, which made both of us laugh nervously as we realized we'd caught each other digging through the self-help aisle like we were both trying to fix something quietly. And she said something like, "I guess this section attracts the emotionally wrecked." And I joked that we were just two overthinkers trying to find out why we spiral over text at 2 a.m. And we ended up talking in that aisle for almost half an hour about books and therapy and how coffee shops always smell better than they taste and how everyone secretly hates being the first to speak in a group setting. And when we finally parted ways, she typed her number into my phone, handed it back with a lopsided grin, and said, "Text me when you remember how to stop overanalyzing everything." So I texted her that night and she responded with a meme and a winking emoji. And just like that, we fell into this easy rhythm of long voice notes, random pictures of odd things we saw during the day, deep conversations about childhood and guilt, and why cinnamon reminds her of her mom's kitchen. And our first actual date was that Sunday, her idea at this little cafe on a quiet corner with mismatched mugs and a waitress who looked perpetually annoyed at the world. And Elise ordered sweet potato pancakes and immediately spilled syrup on her sleeve, then shrugged and said, "Classic, I'm a mess, but at least I'm a sweet one." And I remember laughing in a way that felt like I hadn't laughed in a long time, freely, effortlessly, and over the next few weeks we kept seeing each other, maybe 6 or 7 dates in total, but it felt like more because we were always in touch in this soft, steady kind of way that felt more like music playing in the background than noise demanding attention. And one night after I told her a story about how my grandma used to grow peaches in the backyard, she showed up at my apartment with a paper bag full of fresh peaches from the weekend market, and we sat on my tiny balcony, eating them with juice dripping down our hands, laughing about how good things can be messy too. And I remember sitting there thinking, this is it. This is how it starts. Because she told me she liked slow burns and hated chaos, said she was tired of drama and wanted something that felt safe and consistent. And she spoke about emotional safety, like someone who'd done the hard work to mean it. And I admired that about her, how honest she was, how thoughtful without being performative. And then, without warning, everything stopped one Tuesday morning when I texted her just to wish her luck on a big meeting she'd mentioned and got no response, which didn't seem strange at first because people get busy and life happens. But then Wednesday passed with still no message, and Thursday night I sent a short, gentle text. "Hey, just checking in. All good?" And when that also went unanswered, I started to feel that quiet panic, the one where something inside you knows before your brain catches up. And Friday came, the day we were supposed to have dinner at her place, and I texted her again saying I was picking up a bottle of red wine unless she preferred white. And again, nothing. So I sat in my apartment, staring at my phone for an hour, wine on the counter, wondering if I should go, if she was okay, if something happened, or if I'd unknowingly done something wrong. But I didn't go. I just stayed home feeling stupid and sad and stuck. And a few days later, I sent one last message that said, "I don't know what's going on, but I hope you're okay." If this is your way of ending things, I guess this is the end. I just wish it hadn't been like this. And even that went unanswered. No reply, no apology, no explanation. Just this blank digital space where connection used to be. And eventually I had to face the truth that she ghosted me. And I wish I could say I let it go right away, that I deleted her number and moved on cleanly, but I didn't. I kept checking my phone like an idiot, rereading our old texts, re-listening to her voice notes, wondering if I missed a sign or said something wrong or failed some test I didn't know I was taking. And I kept asking myself over and over again, how do you go from peaches on a balcony to pretending I don't exist? And time passed, weeks into months, and I never heard from her again. Her Instagram went private, her number stayed silent, and eventually I stopped reaching out, not because I stopped caring, but because I finally accepted I wasn't going to get the ending I wanted. And that's what hurts about ghosting. It's not just the absence, it's the silence that demands explanation when there's none coming, and you're left having to write your own ending to a story someone else abandoned halfway through. And eventually the mental noise quieted down and I started dating again slowly, more cautiously, and I stopped romanticizing what Elise and I had. Because the truth is, if someone can walk away without a word, maybe they were never fully in it to begin with. Maybe I was just seeing the version of her I wanted to believe in. And even now, sometimes I wonder if she tells people about me. If she mentions the bookstore, the peaches, the pancakes, or if I was just a chapter she skimmed over and I'll probably never know. And maybe that's okay. But if she ever reads this somehow, somewhere, I hope she knows she could have just said something, anything, because silence isn't kindness. And disappearing doesn't make you mysterious. It just makes you someone I had to learn how to forget. Story 2. It happened last October when I decided to take a break from the endless scroll of dating apps and all the small talk and awkward first meetings that felt more like job interviews than connection. So instead, I booked a solo weekend cabin by a lake up north just to breathe and unplug and maybe remember who I was without a screen. And on the second day, while hiking along a quiet trail dusted in golden leaves, I ran into her Leah standing by the water's edge with her sleeves pulled over her hands and a sketchbook balanced against her knee as she drew the crooked tree leaning over the lake like it had secrets to tell. And I don't know what made me speak to her, but I did something dumb like, "That's a good spot." And she smiled without looking up and said, "It's the best kind, quiet, cold," and nobody asking me about my 5-year plan, which made me laugh harder than I should have. And before I knew it, we were walking the trail together talking about the smell of pine needles and the weird way grief shows up in everyday things, and how she used to live in the city but now just drove out of town whenever the world felt too loud. And when we parted ways that afternoon, she handed me a torn scrap of her sketchbook with her number written on it in smudge pencil and said, "In case you want to find the quiet again." And I texted her that night, not expecting much, but she replied almost instantly. And from there, it just took off long text threads about music and books and the way she hated the sound of her own voice on voicemail. Late night calls that stretched into early mornings where we talk about childhood and shame and who we thought we'd be by now. And within a week, we were meeting up in the city for coffee, her hair still smelling like campfire. And that day, we sat outside on a bench with frost on the armrests and talked like we were trying to slow time down. And she touched my arm when she laughed and leaned in when I spoke, and I remember thinking, maybe this is what it's supposed to feel like. And we kept seeing each other not every day, but consistently, with effort and intention and softness. And one night after she cooked me dinner in her small apartment filled with dried flowers and candle wax dripped onto old books, she rested her head on my shoulder and said, "This feels calm. You feel calm." And I didn't say anything because I didn't want to break the spell. And I still remember the last time I saw her, standing on the sidewalk outside her building with her hoodie pulled tight and her breath fogging the air as she kissed me goodbye and said she'd call me the next day so we could make plans for the weekend. And I smiled like an idiot all the way home, already picturing us watching bad horror movies under a blanket and eating her weird popcorn chocolate combo. But the next day came and went with no message, and the day after that too. And by day 3, I sent a check-in text, not too pushy, just enough to say, "Hey, thinking of you." And it sat there delivered but unread, which turned into another day and another unanswered message, and finally a call that went to voicemail after one ring. And I tried to rationalize it, told myself maybe something came up, maybe she was sick or overwhelmed or just needed space. But the longer the silence stretched, the louder the truth became. And I realized with that slow, aching clarity that I'd been ghosted by someone who once held my hand like she never wanted to let go. And the hardest part wasn't just the absence or confusion, but the betrayal of something that had felt so deeply mutual, like being left alone in the middle of a sentence you didn't know you were writing by yourself. And I never got closure or explanation. or even a final word, just a digital silence where a voice used to be, a quiet that didn't feel peaceful anymore but hollow. And I wish I could say I moved on cleanly, but I carried her ghost into new conversations, into new laughs, into every moment I started to trust again, until eventually her shadow faded from the edges of my life and I returned to that same lake trail months later, stood by the crooked tree and looked out at the stillness, half hoping I'd see her there sketching again, but knowing deep down she wouldn't be. Because some people don't walk back into your life, they just leave footprints that don't fade right away.